Briney is the host of the Congressional Dish podcast. She joins me from San Francisco to talk about 5 important bills circulating through Congress that all Americans should know about. Jen, great to see you again. Let's talk about the first bill you reviewed, the so-called Bank Lobbyist Act. Give me the official title and tell me why the bill is so significant now that it's passed.
Well, thank you for having me back. And yes, the Bank Lobbyist Act is probably my #1 bill, or law, it's a law, for judging this Congress. And the official title is the Economic Growth, Regulatory Relief, and Consumer Protection Act. And really, the best consumer protection that we got out of this is that we're now allowed for free to freeze our credit reports in response to Equifax losing the information of pretty much every American adult. That's the consumer protection part. But the part that really matters is that the Bank Lobbyist Act, that's the nickname, it allows the banks that have between $50 billion and $250 billion in assets to get out of doing stress tests. And stress tests are necessary because we need to know if the banks actually have the cash to cover their losses if the stock market takes another downturn, as it always does. And so what this does in effect is it exempted 25 out of the 38 largest banks in the United States from those stress tests, pretty much making our entire financial system more risky. And I just don't see who that helps other than the banks that want to place more bets on the stock market. So that's a good one. That was S2155 if you want to check out.
And our Congress went for this, especially after 2006, when the banks went in the toilet. Now that our Congress allows them the opportunity that they can do it again, right?
Yes, and ever since Dodd-Frank, which was the financial reform law, became a law in 2010, the Republicans have been trying to break it apart piece by piece. But the Bank Lobbyist Act was really like the sledgehammer that they were able to take to the Dodd-Frank legislation now that they had complete control of Congress and the presidency.
Okay, let's talk about health care. The GOP has drafted several bills aimed at dismantling the Affordable Care Act. What's the status of the Republican efforts to repeal and replace the ACA, start with the American Health Care Act? Where does the bill stand, and what would it actually do?
Yeah, so 2017 was pretty much dominated by the repeal and replace effort, and the American Health Care Act is the House's version of the repeal and replace. And I think the most important things to know about this is that every single bill that the Republicans tried to put forth, including the American Health Care Act, included a way for the insurance companies to get out of providing essential health benefits in return for our premiums. And essential health benefits, there's a list of 10 of them, but the most important ones to me is they cover things like ambulances and emergency care, hospitalizations, pregnancy and preventative care, which it doesn't really get much more basic than that when you're trying to get health care. And health insurance companies would therefore, if the Republicans got their way, be able to take our premiums but not provide those basics in return. So that's the main sin I've noticed of all the Republican bills. And then a way that this was being sold to people, because there are a lot of people who are angry about the idea of having to pay for health insurance if they don't want to. They're being forced to buy a private product or be hit with a tax penalty. But the thing is that none of these bills actually made that tax penalty go away. Instead, they made the tax penalty go to 0, which means it would be very easy for the next Congress to just raise that number. And there was a penalty. It wasn't a tax penalty, but when you did get health insurance, what they would do is the private health insurance companies were allowed to charge you a fee when you finally did get health insurance. And so there was a financial penalty still in all these laws. It was just the money would go to the insurance companies instead of to the government. So the American Health Care Act, that did pass the House of Representatives. Every Democrat voted no, along with 20 Republicans. But it died in the Senate, which I think is good news for all of us.
Okay. What about the status of the skinny repeal vote to amend part of the American Health Care Act?
Yeah, so this was one of the most dramatic moments of the 115th Congress, because the skinny repeal was the Senate's way of just passing something in order to go to conference where they would merge the Senate health care bill with the American Health Care Act. So the skinny repeal was a wildly irresponsible 8-page bill that even the people that voted for it said they didn't want it to become law. They just wanted to go to conference. But this was the law that eventually, or the bill, that died in the Senate when John McCain decided to vote against it. It was that big moment where he went and he put his thumb down. So it's not going any further, but the most important thing to know is even the 8-page law, or bill, I'm sorry, even that 8-page bill would have repealed the essential health benefits requirement and would have just reduced the tax penalty to 0 instead of actually repealing it. So that was the main priority of the Republican Party. And so if you want to judge your House of Representatives representative and your senators, that's a really good way to go about it, by looking at the skinny repeal and the American Health Care Act.
Boy, they're always trying to sneak it some way, aren't they? If the GOP has its way, will the final health care bill be good for average Americans?
I mean, like I said, every version that
so far?
I don't think so, no, because like I said, every single version of a healthcare repeal law that they've passed lets the insurance companies get out of giving us essential health benefits. And so that alone is so abhorrent to me, because I want to get my money's worth when I pay for health insurance. And so allowing the insurance companies to collect my money and not give me health care in return, no, I don't see how that's good for me or good for any Americans other than the people that make money in the health insurance industry.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I see out of it. It seems like the Republican bill benefits the insurance company completely and doesn't benefit the people at all. When it comes to telecom and internet providers, where does the Congress stand on protecting consumer privacy and data? And is there a bill you can break down to help us understand Congress's performance in this arena?
I can do better than that, actually. We have a law. And so there was a law that was passed as part of the Congressional Review Act. The Congressional Review Act allows Congress to look at regulations that were enacted within the last 60 working days of a president's term. And so this Congress decided to look at Obama-era regulations and overturn 16 of them. One of them was a regulation that said that telecoms, so the internet service providers, that they wouldn't be allowed to take our information and sell it without our permission. They would also have to secure our information, and then they would have to tell us about data breaches, which seems pretty basic to me. But the Republicans, and it was the Republicans, decided to repeal that regulation. And when you do that with the Congressional Review Act, it means that a regulation like it is also not allowed to be created unless Congress passes another law. So we actually had a regulation. We had a law that was protecting us from having our information sold by the internet service providers, and they got rid of it, which is another example of this is great for the industry, it's great for the telecoms, but it's not so great for us customers. And so that's another one you can check. The bill number on that one was Senate Resolution 34, if you want to check out the vote on that. And it passed both the House and the Senate, so every one of your people had to cast a vote.
Okay, number 34. We'll mark that one down. Next, let's look at Congress's role in protecting our precious resources. Break down what the stream protection rule was and what happened to it.
So the stream protection rule, this was another one of those regulations that was enacted at the end of the Obama administration, and it would have required more water quality monitoring in streams that are affected by mining, especially coal mining. And it essentially said that these mining companies have to clean up their messes. They would have to take the land that they ruined in their mining operations and get it back to its original condition. And once again, this Congress decided to overturn that regulation with mostly Republican support. It passed both the House and the Senate, and it was signed into law. So this regulation, this protection we did have for our streams, we no longer have, and coal companies are getting out of cleaning up their messes.
Okay, based on these bills, what's the verdict? Is the 115th Congress doing a good job or not?
I mean, it depends on who you're asking. If you're asking the titans of industry and the people that make their money collecting dividends, this Congress is fantastic. But if you're a worker or a consumer, if you collect a paycheck and put that in your bank account, then I am pretty appalled by most of what I've seen in the 115th Congress, with these being excellent examples. So no, I don't think the 115th Congress as a whole is doing a good job, but there are individuals in Congress who are doing a good job, and that's why it's important to check their voting records.
Jen, thanks again for watching Congress for us. You deserve a thank you for that.